What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about a movie titled You Should Have Left. You Should Have Left, starring Kevin Bacon. You Should Have Left is a movie about a father and a husband who is having these odd nightmares. His daughter has these nightmares too. His wife, who is much younger than him, is an actress in Hollywood, okay? And he's been dealing with some jealousy about that and all that, but he's working on it. He's, listening to these programs and kind of doing his own self-therapy to try to work on that. But they decide that they need to get away from the daily grind that they're living because there's a little bit of tension and things like that. So they take a vacation out to Europe. They have this house that's kind of secluded out there by itself. A big, crazy, fancy house that looks interesting, to say the least. Shortly after getting there, on the first night, Kevin Bacon starts experiencing nightmares again, as does his daughter. His daughter, named Ella. His wife, named Susanna. The wife, she's, not believing any of this stuff, I guess you would say, or she just thinks that, he needs help or something. I don't know. Ella, the daughter, sees like an old creepy man and like a shadow moving, and then an old creepy man shows up and starts talking to her. And then she wakes up. Seemingly, it was a dream, but it was almost like she saw it, even though she was awake, because she does mention it to her dad. Like, I saw a shadow and this and that and whatever, and he's just kind of, But then, of course, he has a nightmare where he's seeing some crazy stuff, and the house doesn't look quite the way it should, as far as like what it looks like when he's actually awake. But once again, we're kind of blending reality with the dream, and he doesn't know if he's awake or not. And strange things do start happening. And then we find out that he's not very much liked from where they come from, okay? Which is part of the reason they had to go and get away for a while. He's not very well liked. His daughter starts to question this because she is only about 6 years old or something like that. So his daughter starts to question this and wants to know, why is daddy not liked, okay? Susanna, she tries to explain it to her in the simplest of terms that he was married previous, okay? Because obviously Susanna is much younger than him. He was married previously, and his previous wife had died. How did she die? Well, she drowned. At some point, Kevin Bacon showed up and found his wife, dead in the bathroom. It actually looked like maybe he killed her, okay? So it all went to trial and this and that. He was found not guilty. She basically did herself in, so to speak. So the daughter, processes this, and she's like, well, he's not guilty, is he? He didn't do it. Susanna's like, no, he didn't do it. It's all good. He was found not guilty. Clearly, he wasn't there. This happened hours before he got home that day. But neither here nor there. The nightmares continue for him in this house. At some point, he does go down to the local market, which is a very strange market, to say the least. The old man in there starts to tell him, what are you doing up in that house? He doesn't understand why he's up in that house, and he explains, oh, well, we rented it, for a little vacation getaway. And he's like, oh, okay. And this old man gives off a vibe like he knows more than he's leading on at that point. So the dreams continue, and they get worse and worse. At one point, he goes into this like office room that's in the house, and in the dream, there's an actual doorway that isn't there in real life, or maybe it is. But he sees this doorway and he opens it, and it's this huge long staircase that goes down, way down, underneath the house. So he follows it down there. He's walking through a weird hallway with a bunch of doors. And then he sees somebody snapping Polaroids of him. He already saw a Polaroid hanging on the wall in the house that looked like that. Now, mind you, there's no pictures or anything else hanging up in the house, but he did see that one Polaroid. So when he goes down there, it looks just like that picture that he saw. And when he's walking through and he sees there's all kinds of Polaroid pictures laying on the ground and everywhere else in this basement. And he picks one up and he sees himself laying in bed next to his daughter. And he's like, wow, that's not even possible. And he's freaking out. This can't be happening. And he runs out of there, and then he wakes up. And then everything seems to be okay. Well, more trouble brews because he ends up finding out that his wife, who he's jealous over, by the way, actually has a second phone, and she's been hiding this second phone from him. What she discovers she is actually cheating on him. And so that creates a big problem between the two. And she decides she's going to leave and go stay somewhere for a night to get away from everything, because obviously she was caught, and so she wants to get away. They decide they need to just be separate for that night. The daughter stays with Kevin Bacon in the house. He visits the old man, or he makes a phone call to the old man and starts asking him questions about the house. He asks about, who was he talking about? Stetler, they're saying the name is, that owns the house. And he's like, well, this house was recently built. And he's like, however, there was a house there before that, and another one before that, and another one before that. And before that, there was a tower there built, and it seems like every few years, the house or tower that's there gets torn down, a new one gets built, so forth and so on. Then one night, while him and his daughter, that last night, are in the house, the daughter is left in bed while he seemingly is having another nightmare, and he starts walking through the house and realizes this house seems bigger than it is. So the next day, they're measuring it. They're measuring the outside of the house. They're measuring the inside of the house. The inside of the house measures wider than it actually does on the outside of that same room. And then they find that weird. So Ella's like, I'm going to go get my coat. She runs in the house. You can see her in the house through the window getting her coat. Then she walks out the door to the side. And when the camera comes over, there's nowhere to even walk. She never came out the side. He goes looking for her, goes in the door. Her coat's just laying on the floor. And then he starts tearing through the house, trying to find her. She's screaming and hollering to help her. He doesn't know where to go. She's ended up walking down these weird hallways, the weird, creepy hallways, and then she sees a bathtub, okay? And she sees like hair, long hair coming out of the backside of the bathtub, because it's just a bathtub sitting in the middle of a room. And she's like, hello, are you there? Who is that? And she walks up, and here it's a person that is seemingly dead, who must be the previous wife to Kevin Bacon. And she like comes to life. She freaks her out. She starts screaming. And of course, Kevin Bacon hears this. He's trying to run through the house and try to find her, but he keeps going in circles, and he goes through one room and ends up in another, but then that room changes. And throughout all this, the time is like shifting greatly. It'll seem like he walks out of the room for 2 minutes, but then he's actually gone for like 3-4 hours. And you'll notice that on the clock. And the time keeps shifting like that, real quick. They try to leave the house, right? He does find her eventually, and they try to leave the house. They decide they're going to try to leave. It's nighttime. They're both freaked out. They don't want to be there anymore. So they decide they're going to try to leave the house. They leave. They're in the dark. They're going down the hill, and they keep walking down the hill, and they keep walking down the hill, and they see the lights from town. They're like, oh, we see the lights. We're out of here. Okay, finally. And as they get closer to the lights, oh yeah, that's right. They're back at the house. It was not lights from the town. It was lights from the house. And the daughter's like, how are we back here? We kept walking down the hill. And he's like, I don't know. But now we have to stay here one more night. And he starts acting weird, like he knows he has to stay there. It's kind of weird like that. You start wondering what's going on here. So they go back in there. They see a figure in the window too, by the way, when they were walking away from the house. They saw a person in the house, and she even said there's somebody in the house. And he tried to ignore it, just keep walking. And eventually they end up back at the house. Like I said, they go back in the house. He said, don't worry, I'm going to protect you. And then they fall asleep in the same bed together, in that same position that we saw in the Polaroid earlier in the movie. So very weird there. And then he wakes into another nightmare, seemingly. And he's going through the house trying to find Ella, because she has disappeared from the bed again. And now she's somewhere in there, screaming. He can't find her. He sees her shadow like knocking on a wall, but he can't get through the wall because it's made of brick. He comes across the bathtub that she came across in the middle of the room. Bathtub is full of water, but there's nobody in the bathtub. He walks over and he's looking, and he doesn't see anybody in the bathtub. And then all of a sudden he's attacked by his previous wife, who's nude and dead and everything else. And she's attacking him violently. And then all of a sudden he gets her off of him. He gets up and he sees the old man that had previously talked to his daughter Ella. Hold up. I know, just like the movie, we just jumped ahead 3 hours in like the matter of seconds. Mainly because my camera battery died. Anyway, So after he confronts, I don't know where I left off, but we're going to start here. After he realizes the old man is actually him and he's confronting himself, his other self says, "You know what you have to do." Okay, so then he starts to go try to find his daughter Ella in the house, wherever she's at. She's screaming and hollering. But as he's moving through the house, he's kind of moving through time as well, like a time loop. He's seeing himself and his wife arrive at the house for the first time. He's seeing other events that have already played out in the house. He does see an event that happens in the future that hasn't happened yet. But he's seeing all these things happen while he's moving through the house. And at one point in the movie, he's writing in a journal, okay? And I haven't talked about this, I don't think, yet. But at one point before all this, he's writing in a journal, and he notices somebody wrote in his journal. And he doesn't know who it was, and he's freaking out about it, because in the journal it says, "You should have left. Too late now." Or, "You should leave. Go now." Things like that were wrote in the journal, okay? Well, flash forward to where we're at in the movie up to this point, and he's moving through the house. He's seeing himself writing in the journal. And mind you, also, before I go any further, when he was writing in the journal earlier in the movie, you can see his reflection in the window, and when he's writing and he hears something and he looks away, the reflection in the window doesn't look away. It's actually still like looking right at him. So it's very weird. It's a little spooky. But anyway, he comes into the room, he sees himself writing in the journal, and then he sees himself get up and walk away and then leave the house and whatnot. So he walks over to the journal and he opens it up and he writes, "You should leave, go now." So it turns out he himself was the one who was writing in the journal, okay? Because this house has put them in some kind of weird time loop. And so he was kind of going back in time, going forward in time, and that's who ended up writing in the journal, was actually himself. We still don't know what really is going on here, but he eventually does find his daughter and gets her to safety. They come out of the rooms and everything's seemingly back to normal in the house. You know, the house looks normal again and whatnot. And his wife arrives outside and he goes out there and he says to his daughter, "Well, you and mommy are going to be going and leaving and whatnot. Okay, I'm going to be staying." And she's upset about this. And then he starts talking to his wife saying he's not coming with them. He's staying behind. He has to stay behind. He deserves to be where he's at. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And she's trying to plead with him about this and get him to think twice and get him to come with her, and they're going to make up for the troubles they've had and whatever. He's not having it, because he reveals that he actually did kill his former wife. He let her drown. He watched her drown, and he did nothing about it. He literally killed her. So even though even though it was deemed that he didn't in the end by the jury and everything else, he actually did, and he's been living with this guilt the whole time, and that's where the nightmares have been coming from and everything else. And so his doomed destiny is to be in this house and most likely, take his own life. Mind you, through all this, portion of the movie, in the mid portion of the movie, he's actually wearing the Mrs. Voorhees sweater. So a nice little callback to Friday the 13th that he starred in. He actually is wearing the Mrs. Voorhees sweater through a good portion of this movie. So I just wanted to throw that in there. He goes back in the house after his wife and his daughter leave. And it shows him in the house, and you can tell the scene changed to nighttime. And he's looking out the window, and he's looking out the window at himself and his daughter walking down the road at night. Whenever they tried to get out of the house that one time, it was actually him standing in the window watching himself take his daughter down the road. And when his daughter said, "Oh, there's somebody standing in the house," it was actually him. So very strange, to say the least. Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. There's so many other details that I did not cover because this movie gets pretty deep with the details. Couldn't even, touch the surface of half the things going on in this review. But, I mean, if I did, we'd be here forever. If you liked Stir of Echoes, which is also another Kevin Bacon movie, you might like this because it's the same director, okay? And then, of course, Kevin Bacon involved as well. So, and also, it turns out that Kevin Bacon is Stetler. So, the guy that was in the house, Stetler, it's actually him. I don't have a whole lot of problems with this movie. There's some weird moments that aren't weird because they're supposed to be. But there are some moments that kind of dip it down a little teensy bit for me, but still, it's a very, very good twists and turns movie for sure, and a good horror movie too, because it does get freaky at times. So I'm going to have to give it 4 out of 5 knives. That's right, 4 out of 5 knives for You Should Have Left. And I highly recommend it. Definitely highly recommend it. Did not expect it at all. Like, I was just scanning through horror movies and I'm like, what is this? You Should Have Left. It has Kevin Bacon in it. Okay, well, check it out. Seeing that it had the director from Stir of Echoes, and I'm like, this could be something. And well, it was definitely something. It didn't get all that great reviews, elsewhere. And I mean, hey, whatever. I actually thought it was really interesting and spooky and a good time, quite frankly. So, yeah, I recommend checking it out. And with that said, I will catch you all down the road.